needs versus wants. And we're also going to be, philosophically talking about the idea of gratitude versus resentment. And finally, we're going to look into maybe a scientific reading of the human requirements for what is needed to live as a human being. So, why don't we go ahead and we'll delve in first off by just reading the ideal of what a need is. A need is something that is necessary for an organism to live a healthy life. Needs are distinguished from wants. In the case of a need, a deficiency causes a clear adverse outcome, a dysfunction or death. In other words, a need is something required for a safe, stable, and healthy life, while a want is a desire, wish, or aspiration. That's a very, very good descriptor. That gives you both a good descriptor of what a want is and a good descriptor of what a need is. Now, just to, again, we'll brush the surface here and we'll go to want and we'll find a definition. I wonder where this definition came from Wikipedia. Let's see if Wikipedia has a good fighting definition for want. Wikipedia doesn't seem to even be in the initial results at all for want. That's very interesting how. Okay, so want. The idea of want can be examined from many perspectives. In secular societies, want might be considered similar to the emotion desire, which can be studied scientifically through the disciplines of psychology or sociology. Want might also be examined in economics as a necessary ingredient in sustaining and perpetuating capitalist societies that are organized around principles like consumerism. Alternatively, want can be studied in a non-secular, spiritual, moralistic, or religious way, particularly by Buddhism, but also Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Alright, well, didn't say much yet. Alright, in economics, a want is something that is desired. It is said that every person has unlimited wants. I don't know if that's true. That means you'd have unlimited desires. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I accept that as a truth. Anyway, but limited resources. Economics is based on the assumption that only limited resources are available to us. Thus, people cannot have everything they want and must look for the most affordable alternatives. Wants are often distinguished from needs. A need is something that is necessary for survival, such as food and shelter, whereas a want is simply something that a person would like to have. They should put something like a fancy shelter or very fine food that, is high quality versus, maybe a lower quality food that would sustain them just as well. Some economists have rejected this distinction and maintain that all of these are simply wants with varying levels of importance. That's true except for maybe food, but not necessarily the quality of the food. But yes, by this viewpoint, wants and needs can be understood examples of overall concept of demand. Again, very, very economic way to look at this. While in modern secular societies, want is considered a purely economic, social, scientific, or objectively psychological reality of human existence. Many religious or spiritual traditions prescribe or advise with lessons on want and wanting, which might alternatively be termed desire. Buddhism is perhaps the most common example of a religious tradition that offers wisdom and advice about the concept of want and wanting or desire. The second of the Four Noble Truths is the desire or wanting is the cause for most suffering experienced in life. That's not necessarily even slightly true. Maybe for most of, I don't know, but my want to make my area better would make me clean it and make it better, right? And I'm talking about the space of land that I might have. And my want to do that would benefit every single creature in that space. And it most certainly has, that I've seen particularly. So, and that's a desire too. It's a desire to have beautiful, so your desires can determine whether or not, I like the Four Noble Truths, but that's an interesting little caveat that I'll kind of fight against. So I think that we've gotten a pretty basic idea of what a need versus a want is. Now, The idea that most people don't really have that distinction in a real sense is what we're kind of talking about and maybe trying to fight against. And just real quick, let's go while we speak a little bit more on these things. We're going to just go to images real quick and see what the the particular images you might see for the words, because again, this is very strange and interesting the way these things can be posed. So need, want, a lot of what you need, wants versus needs. See, so it's a very interesting thing because this seems to be a dilemma within the philosophical sphere already. The idea that needs versus wants are something to be debated. And of course it should be, because within that reading of want, you could say that it kind of alluded to the idea that even shelter is a want, and perhaps we could live without shelter if we had some other things like a warmer area, a warmer climate, or we had large furs on that we could keep ourselves warm. There's ways to make it so that even shelter may be just a want. And in theory, over time you could just eat enough and develop in a way that you could probably exist even without the furs, and so those may be just a want to and see. And then we get into a kind of a strange space where you say, okay, well, is what defines humans and human nature the idea that we've wanted things and changed our form in order to enact those changes of want? Have we made a society just because of our need to, or our want to have everything, and our real needs were always very, very basic and simple, and alluded to the killing of an animal and eating it, basically? It's an interesting ideal. So aside from some of those basic ideas of want versus need, again, that we've been kind of discussing in this first bit, there doesn't seem to be much other than some goofy commercial stuff. Here's an interesting thing, though. You got these two dogs that are in this cardboard. It says need a good home. But do they need? Those two dogs look really functional versus these three pugs here, which they probably do need help. You put them out in the wild, something's eating them in a day. These two little badasses here, probably if you were to toss them out somewhere warm enough, they'd probably go and hunt some muskrats or kill something and they'd be fine. So again, an interesting way to read that word need a good home. Actually, those things want you probably just to let them go, and they're going to go run off and do whatever the hell they want, and they'll probably be fine. At least I've seen in my experience with wild cats. I live on a mountainside, and you would think that you understand maybe the needs of a cat. And I think that I do on some levels. I understand they need food and they need water, but you would be amazed at how strong they are in comparison to your envisionment of them. If they are used to living out in a wild, snowy wilderness, they don't need your help to survive. They literally will just grow these huge fur coats, and they're just these wild cats that'll just kill the mice and whatnot. You can feed them and they'll stick around your house and kill the mice for you. And that's exactly what you probably want to do if you are in the kind of situation I'm in, which is, I've got, 10 acres. I'm fairly far removed, and I don't want to have cats myself, and definitely don't want them inside the house because of allergy issues. So, I am fine with having these wild cats just kind of exist in the space and feed them enough so that they keep around the area. But to say that they need like a heated area, I have heated areas they can go to outside for the other animals. so they can, but they really don't even need that. They're incredibly resilient, and in that same stead, you would probably be amazed how resilient the human body would be if you were to have it be tested under true nature. Then you would say, well, what is our real needs? And you'd be probably pretty impressed that we could do the level of athletic and wild ability, like wild animal ability, that we can see out of other creatures. I think that you would be amazed at what a human being might be capable of. And so let's just go over to want real quick and see if there's anything. Lot less need versus want stuff. Only one of them there. There's a lot more of just talking about want when we talk about want. Isn't that interesting? Whereas with need, you can see a lot of dissension initially of want versus need. It seems like there's one. Maybe there's not as many as two only, three. Okay, so maybe I'm being a little bit facetious. Maybe I'm being a little extreme. Need at 4. So let's count the first 4. Oops. Yeah, I've got this a little bit weirdly done here. Okay. So in the first 4, there's 1. Want versus need. Want versus need. 2, 3. Okay, so maybe it's about the same. So even with the idea of want, maybe a little bit more skewed towards the idea of want, but there's still that fight. Oh no, 4. Okay, so, but it's kind of the same idea. But there's still that idea that there is a real problem between the ideal of want and need. So it's something definitely to be aware of, at the very least. So let's see here. What are we going to go to next? I believe we're going to look at true human requirements to live. And while we do that, I want to go to images so that there's something more to be seen besides just my face. But I want to say that I think that I've gotten, and I'll say pampered, because we are all pampered probably in the past couple hundred years since electricity has been invented, and we've been using it to heat water and other things for the masses of the public versus whatever was going on before that moment. I don't really understand exactly how they were doing. They're probably all heating water individually, or they had some kind of boiler systems, or I have no clue. But the point is that I think I found almost the bare minimum of what a human being really does require for existence, and that's you need to have hot water. You need to have not necessarily potable water, but you have to have a potable water source, obviously. You need to have I think indoor plumbing, if you're in a place as cold as I am. Maybe you can get away with having an outdoor situation for going to the bathroom. I wouldn't suggest that. And for other human requirements, you need a place to cook, and you need, I've had 400 square feet for a large period of time. I made it a little bit larger with an addition, so I have maybe about 540 or so square feet of my house now. So I have a true, living room. But the idea that most people have of what they think is required, and, I do all of my cooking and all of these things, so the requirements that people normally have or they imagine out of, existence is so much higher. And also their budgets are so much farther out of the span of normal relatable, forms. For what it's worth, I spend $1,000 a month, maximum. And I was lucky enough to, buy this, card shack of a house for like $24,000 with, the 10 acres that it has on it. And that's why, there's, probably snow outside for 4 to 6, months out of the year. But, it is what it is. And so, if you got yourself wrapped around those ideals, you'd say, okay, well, what is the real requirements that I need to make it so that I'm going to be satisfied with what I'm doing and what I'm living with? And, like I said, I think that it's, you got to have a bathroom, you got to have a basic kitchen, you should have, a bedroom and a living room, because, when you don't have that extra space, you're going to have some issues. And I felt like that personally. It's got to be insulated. Besides that, I'd be amazed at, what people don't even realize, that there are all of these huge open spaces that literally have water channeling down from all of these snowpacks so that they could have their own shallow wells. And like I did, I literally found a well that was just down the side of the mountain, and on my land, obviously, and I was able just to dig a 300-foot line to it, and put a normal well pump in there, and now I have water all of the time. And people just they don't relate that idea that they could actually do all of these things, and the requirements that they expect are let's say too that they don't have that. This is kind of getting into the point of gratitude, so we'll go and just switch over before we talk too much of some of the articles on human requirement of actual living. But people don't have a true gratitude for what it is that they've actually have. They are living in these high amenity areas, and they're like, why is it so expensive? I don't understand why my rent's so expensive. Because there are literally thousands of shops all around you, thousands of places to have jobs. There's thousands of things. Versus me, I'm up, I've got 6 miles worth of dirt road, and it is a paved, county road for what it's worth, and it's even plowed. But, people don't have a gratitude for the fact that when they're in these situations, they're like, why is it so expensive to be here? Well, it's because everybody has already put all the money in to make it worth it to exist there, and you're the one that's like trying to come in as the absolute outsider, just being a renter. Of course you're not going to be able to have any kind of real say or ability to sway the environment there. And you're not going to be grateful at all. Of course you wouldn't, because you're having to spend probably, when you're that lower tier, you're having to spend, half or more of your salary just to pay your rent. So of course, you're going to be really quite unhappy. But it's a hard thing, regardless. There might be ways to go and get cheaper land within some of these closer places to these high amenity areas, so you still can have a good job. But there is a lack of gratitude for the fact that all of these apartments, all of these houses are already built, and they're already in these stationed areas where there's sewer systems, where there's fresh water, where there's, electricity. And believe it or not, those things are not free. Those things they don't magically appear in space and time. That's not how things work. So let's go and move real quickly to some of the actual ideal scientific requirements for what human needs are. So here's from Forbes: 6 fundamental human needs we need to meet to live our best lives. And if they don't, ignore this, then I'm just gonna. We don't need to keep looking at Forbes, because food, water, shelter, sleep, other, novelty. See, and that's amenities for what it's worth, novelty. But so screw Forbes. I hate anybody that wants you to disable your ad blocker. That's not my business. You deal with that on your own time. So the 7 fundamental human needs. Let's see. Is this Maslow finally, or do I have to go just look up Maslow's hierarchy of needs somewhere? Functions and requirements. One of these was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Let's see. Here we are, I believe. Yeah. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs has been a kind of a common reality for quite some time, it seems like. And what I mean by that is that Maslow's hierarchy of needs has been, for quite a while, an accepted, I don't know, it's almost like a pyramidal structure for what you, here we are, for what you need to justify a strong and functional human being. And it appears like they start, the basis is biological, followed by safety, which makes perfect sense. You first off need to literally birth an animal, I suppose. Let's talk about that as the simple biological, right? And we'll follow off by safety. You need to keep that animal, that child, safe for whatever level of time it takes for it to at least develop into a level where it can keep its own safety on some basis. And then more safety that you can, show onto it. It's going to benefit it, of course. Love and belonging. That's probably the next, step within a, standard cycle. That's probably makes sense. After you get something safe, then you cherish it and you care for it. And it feels that level of care. It gets a level of esteem based on that level of care. And from that level of esteem, it's able to go on and do things of value, which makes it satisfied and gives it a level of fulfillment. It's not a bad way to describe this, I don't believe. So let's go and look at the actual 7 basics, and they are air, water, food, shelter, safety, sleep, and clothing, in some cases. It's an interesting, addition, because I probably would agree with that. Because, again, people can live in places where it's incredibly warm, or it's maybe not incredibly warm. Let's say it's just right. You're Goldilocks, and you're, in the middle bed. It's just right. It's 72 degrees all the time, so your skin never gets too hot, never gets too cold. You wouldn't need clothes. Okay, so I can say in some cases, sure, that makes perfect sense. All right, depending on the situation, the importance of these 7 basic needs may be lower or higher, except air, which you always need no matter what. That's funny. All right, so interesting how this is strange. What are they talking about oxygen so much for right here in this? See, Maslow's hierarchy of needs it's almost like kind of a philosophical thing more, and that's why this was a good, showing of it. Because, yes, obviously, the second a human doesn't have air, that's the bottom need. It doesn't matter how fulfilled they were a second before. If they're suddenly, being choked to death and then they die moments later, you can see that the biological was definitely more important than the fulfillment moment, right? But it's actually kind of more of a philosophical idea, the idea that you need to have these basics to even be able to build up to a point where you will actually have true fulfillment or esteem. And it's funny because, the biological, it's almost like a non-starter, whereas the food is almost could be included in the love and belonging, because if someone's actually cooking for you, or even if you're cooking for yourself, that might be a part of the esteem portion. I don't know what else is going on. You need clean air. Yeah, what keeps life? You can survive. What is this? Okay, so water. Is this? Are they really talking about this from a very scientific standpoint? Because that's not really what the intent was. At least when I learned it, it was it was kind of given that, of course, you need water and you need food and you need air, but it's like after those points, then we're going to talk about the actual things that matter, that make it so that you have a hierarchy of needs that gives you that level of fulfillment, of higher attainment. I remember them talking about how for some reason the few people that they thought in American society they had done that was, one of them was Abraham Lincoln, who had attained, self worth, or whatever it was, that they use for this. This is so weird. Look at the way they're posing this. They're telling you what a shelter does. Isn't that weird? This is such a strange way to be playing this. They they literally, what a stupid article. Holy shit. That's funny. Um Whoa. That's funny the way that was posed. They use the name Maslow and they use his, hierarchy of needs, but then they don't. I mean, so if they wanted to talk about it scientifically, they should have just shown the hierarchy of needs and then labeled all of the things next to it. But the way they did it was so. I don't know. It shows, a lack of understanding about what we're even talking about, to a point where I'm really confused as to why that person wrote something about basic human needs. I mean, I I guess they were trying to be very, very, very scientific, and maybe that's good. But holy shit, I don't know. Let's give that one more look. Like I'm not. Uh, I mean, you can survive 3 minutes without air. Oxygen is what keeps you alive. I mean, I guess, okay, so if you're actually functionally like a child, like you've never learned anything in your life before, then maybe this is useful for you. But if you wanted to talk about the philosophy of, what is required to make a human survive and be functional and happy, I don't think that this has been at all valuable. This doesn't talk about the idea of a root cellar, of an area to keep, vegetables that will allow you to keep them for months on end. This doesn't talk about having enough space or compost to be able to continue to create, plants. This doesn't talk about, potentially having some kind of a crop or a livestock, that you can handle and deal with, while at the same time will be able to work within the confines of whatever home you're living in. This doesn't seem to reference anything about anything useful. So let's see if there's something that does. What conditions are required for life? How stuff works. Let's see. I doubt it. What conditions are required for life? What do they mean by this? Are they trying to say, like, how do you start it? Oh. What conditions are required to start life? You think that you can actually define that? Oh my God. I don't know what their intent is with this. Holy crap, though, huh? It's nothing. Yeah. Thank God. Are looking for when searching for signs of life outside there. Let's take a deeper look at what's required for life to exist. A main requirement's water. Yeah, maybe, but definitely carbon. Yeah. I mean, what the hell? So I thought, initially I looked at some of these articles and I was like, some of these look like they're okay, and I imagine that they were, but um, we might be better off, going, instead of looking at human requirements, we might just talk about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and go look at, maybe a little bit clearer. Oh. Got, the wrong keyboard here. So I just unmuted myself on the stream there. Well, let's see here. Let's do Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because, good Lord, I don't feel like we're getting anywhere with, whatever the hell that was. Alright, so physiological, which, we basically, we've done all of these before. And self-actualization, that's the way that it's actually described. when we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's good. So, in order to actually, get to a state of self-actualization, I would say most to all of these things are necessary. Yeah, you couldn't at any one point not have all of these things. Now, what level of those things do most people have and not recognize? Or perhaps at some point, maybe they're too close to one another. Maybe that's the problem with those a city that's got a lot of amenities. The problem is that, yes, you've got a lot of possibilities. You've got a lot of jobs available. You've got a lot of everything available. You've got a lot of people available, social situations. You've got everything that you could possibly want. But you also don't have one thing that you want, and that is the level of space you might want to require to get some level of isolation or some level of removal from that. And not constantly, but only the fact is that you can never do it, so it kind of becomes a problem. That everyone is always right next to you, on top of you. Their fences and their backyards are so close that you can hear them if they talk loud. There's no chance that you can ever really get any real space in your own mind and in your own thoughts. And, with that ideal, it might be hard even when you have the physiological and the safety and the love and belonging, that maybe you don't have the esteem because you can't ever really, you're constantly brought down by the ideal that people around you are just, you don't have any space to, well, I don't know. Would that help with belonging, the massive amount of people and the larger amount of social situations that you're naturally going to be under? You would think so. That somewhere you would find that space where you had more belonging, right? As long as you had the food and you had the shelter and you had the safety. I do wonder. I wonder if there is some kind of break that happens, though, within the form of a person when they just, I guess it's not that they are a part of it, but imagine you're somewhere and there is an ambulance, that goes by. And I mean, in a normal big city, that's an incredibly common thing. Or a police officer's, siren as they're wailing by, as they're driving by. That has an effect on you, even though you're not a part of it. You're not the individual affected by it. So maybe it is an esteem issue that ends up happening because you kind of get beaten down and you don't have the ability to completely remove yourself in your own mind's eye from the situations around you. And so your ability to self-actualize is much more difficult. Because I've been kind of wondering that, myself. How much are the people around you, do they really affect and change you in a very negative light, in a very unfunctional way? And I do wonder whether or not it's, basically a constant. That you have these moments around you that are non-related to you completely. And that while you have all of the things that you would imagine would give you the ability to self-actualize within your own mind, because there's so many states of dysfunction and tragedy around you that your own esteem is not able to be, codified, not able to be, made into something real. And and maybe not even just, naturally the bad things around you, but to just see other people around you that, you think it's so normal, but you kind of have just normalized what might be other people being very, very dysfunctional, like drunken messes, and, really at some point you might recognize that only if you were away from them long enough to decide what you thought was right or wrong. And so maybe that you would find that these people were, you know, a part of your love and belonging, moment in this hierarchy all along. It's an interesting idea. I definitely am a little bit confused about the idea of, whether or not, people have a lot of issues because they are constantly being affected by those others around them, and if that sense of love and belonging is actually a negative at some point. And then, it breaks their ability to have that higher esteem and that self-actualization. And they all obviously have all their needs fulfilled in really basic ways. Some of the most, their needs are done, and so they're at this want stage, and but they don't realize that some of the needs that they filled while they were doing the love and belonging stage of their life are actually going to be negatives when they're trying to have a normal sense of esteem about themselves. Because this happens while you're growing up, is that you imagine that people are really your very good friends, and so you have a sense of esteem though about yourself when you talk, and when they make fun of you about certain things, you get this sense that you're fighting both your own want to be better and your want to belong within their ideals. And obviously, as you grow older, you're going to realize that that's a stupid idea, that you should just have much better esteem, and just then you'll get a state of self-actualization, and that won't happen because of a bad, state of belonging that you might have. And only through states of, real belonging will you get to that. And, again, I just wonder whether or not people, when they're living in larger cities, whether they just are too close to each other, and these things that are happening that are completely unrelated to them are changing their minds and making so, even when they have everything in perfect order, they're still going to get to this weird state where they're just always thinking that they're supposed to be their brothers, that's living right next to them, that, somehow because, they got raided, when they were doing something crazy and they were, yelling or some insane thing that, it just relates to you, and you say, oh, am I more like that person? You say, no, I'm not, but at the same time, you've had to experience some strange thing that, obviously it just takes you farther away from whatever it is you're actually going towards in your mind and in your life. And I really do feel bad for people when they have, their neighbors literally just next to them all the time, because, my sister's a fucking nut for what it's worth, and she would yell and be insane, and I felt bad for everybody within, 6, houses. And I'm sure that would disturb, and, probably some people, they take in, they're like, oh man, I feel so good that I'm not like that person. And so maybe they get an esteem, but then they still have the problems of, maybe they have, they're starting to have safety issues where they feel like their house is no longer a place where they can be happy and, just contented. And yeah, it feels to me like, if she had her own space, she could be, yelling to high heaven. It doesn't matter. And, you're not affecting those other people, and then they can, but, when we're in those little cul-de-sacs, with tract houses, in every single 5 feet, I don't know if you can ever really break away and get your own sense of true esteem, and even get a sense of whether or not you are belonging in your situation that you're imagining you're in, or whether or not you are just fitting in. And then you're never going to be able to break to a higher sense of self, because your esteem is always going to be, cast down by what you imagine are friends. And it's a very difficult thing, but very useful to actually learn. when you finally learn that about yourself, you'll say, oh, these people, they weren't really my friends. They were kind of making fun of these good philosophical decisions and thoughts I was making. And, that was breaking me from ever being able to actually do something of value. And, sometimes life is hard and you don't have everything. You don't get to have perfect, friendships. You don't get to have perfect, and you'll see too that you'll have friends that were very good friends and then people that you were near far too often because they were, for whatever reason, in this same circle. And, it's good to grow up and grow away from some people, I will say, in some senses. So, let's kind of go on to the kind of more philosophical, which is, the idea of gratitude. And before we just look at more of these, because, you can see that it's actually seems like almost a religious idea, looking at some of those images. That people kind of view it as, like, ooh, gratitude. Like, look at their arms are all out, and, oh, I'm grateful for being sustained, blah, blah, blah. Gratitude is an attitude. Okay, so gratitude is incredibly important, but, we sometimes, don't even recognize what it is that we should have gratitude for. And that is, gratitude, thankfulness, or gratefulness, from the Latin word gratis, or pleasing, or thankful. Really? I didn't realize it was from gratis. That's interesting. Is a feeling of appreciation felt by and or similar positive response shown by the recipient of kindness, gifts, help, favors, or some other type of generosity towards the giver. Okay. So, gratitude, I think, is strange to put it in the respect of a generosity towards a giver of gifts. Because I don't necessarily think, the ideal of God is outside of us, outside of our mind's eye, outside of our own being. I think in the Gnostic sense that everything is within us. So we would have a gratitude maybe more towards our own ability to sustain and be stronger and be more functional. We wouldn't have a gratitude necessarily even to a God when we're talking about, a gratitude of the things that we have. Well, maybe like, maybe if you want to go there, what you should say is like, I have a well that I got a well pump in. I have gratitude that there is a manufacturer that made that well pump at a price which was acceptable for me to buy. And that, I'm sure they have a gratitude towards me for the ideal that I bought it, because that money makes it so that they can continue to go on in business. I have a gratitude for, the money that I got so that I could, buy the PEX to bring the, water line all the way up here. I've and I guess, so you shouldn't even, again, it seems like even when we talk about like gratitude when it comes to our own being, it would be better to apply that gratitude not to some kind of outside God force, but definitely to a true force of nature. Not to say that there isn't some force of nature like God that, is a, like the idea of fate, or, parke, as it's said in Greek. It's not to say that those things don't have sway or power in whatever senses you may imagine them to have. But there is something to be said about having gratitude towards, the very real things, because that is, from that you can divine a better understanding of reality, I believe. And so that's why when I look at these images initially, I say, whoa, this seems very gratuitous, would be how I would describe it. This is a gratuitous way of showing this, of showing what gratitude means. See, gratitude, I don't know, in an image, what would I use in my mind's eye when I think of gratitude in an image? Um, it is being, thankful for the things that you have because they are, and you could be thankful for things that you've even made because you have, the ability to do such. That could be, you could be have a gratitude for your own skills and abilities. There isn't any hubris in that or any wrong. So gratitude is a very strange thing where, as an ideal, you can have gratitude not only for the things you have, the people you have in your life, but also for your own abilities without it being a center of pride, I think. Because, I have gratitude that I have running water in my house, but I have gratitude that I have the ability to have dug the water line and make it work, and, I had the intelligence to, fuse the electrical line, and there's this interesting thing you do with well pumps where there's this sheathing that when you put the two electrical lines together, you just put them together and then you do a quick, turn, right? But then there's this sheathing that goes over it that, you heat, shrink the sheathing onto the electrical line, so then, it's covered by a thing that is, electrically sound for water. But yeah, very interesting. But I have gratitude for my own intelligence and abilities to do those things. So you're allowed to even have gratitude in such a sense. You don't have to have gratitude just towards a giver of gifts or towards, what else did they try to label it as? Feeling of appreciation felt by or similar positive responses shown by the recipient. You don't have to be the recipient of kind. You could have gratitude for yourself. That's what's interesting. For just your own intelligence and abilities. You are so there's a little bit of a misstep in that ideal of gratitude, that it has to be coming or be felt towards someone. It can be felt actually towards your own self because of your own abilities. And that's probably the type of gratitude most people experience most often. Because, it's after, you clip your own, nails that you have a gratitude for yourself. I suppose if someone else is doing it, yeah, you should probably have a gratitude towards them, but you probably wouldn't. You probably have a resentment, which is what we'll talk about in a second. Why? Because I don't know. You hopefully you wouldn't. Hopefully you'd be a good person. Okay, so let's just talk about what they kind of show for the idea of gratitude. We can look at what psychology today says for whatever reason. I think psychology is the most inane and false, of all sciences, but let's see what they say. So, gratitude is the expression of appreciation for what one has. So that's a little bit more true than at least what we were seeing a second ago. It is a recognition of value independent of monetary worth. Okay, is that gratitude? Independent of monetary worth. I don't know if that's true. I think that, there's nothing wrong with it having a value that is able to be monetarily, excised. You could have that. There's nothing wrong with that, I think. Spontaneously generated from within. I guess. Okay. It is an affirmation of goodness and warmth. No, not necessarily an affirmation of goodness and warmth. Because, let's say I was in the middle of a war situation, a war zone, and there was a man in front of me, and he was about to shoot me, and I threw a throwing knife at him and, hit him in the arm so he wasn't able to shoot me, and then I ran over and I cut his throat. I would be very grateful that I had the skills to do that and that he didn't end up hitting me. Um, and I don't know if that would be an affirmation of goodness and warmth in that instance, but I would definitely have that spontaneously generated from within gratitude. And would that be an affirmation of goodness and warmth? Definitely not from the view of the other man, but it is my ability to kill another man an affirmation of goodness and warmth, because I would have gratitude if I was in a fight with another and then they were going to kill me and I killed them. See, so we're kind of getting into the weeds here already with this explanation. Okay, so this social emotion strengthens relationships. Well, I guess so, because like I said before, you can have gratitude toward yourself, and if you have a greater gratitude towards your own skills, you'll probably have higher self-esteem. Is that a strengthened relationship with yourself even? Yeah. So, I mean, yes, and any gratitude that you have towards other people definitely would probably strengthen your relationship with them. Sure. Okay. That's fine. And its roots run deep in evolutionary history. Yeah, well, that's fine. I mean, any of the real emotions like gratitude or anger and happiness, these things are definitely they run deep in evolutionary history. That's a non-starter, but okay. Emanating from the survival value of helping others and being helped in return. I suppose in time that led to some of the guest rights that you would have seen in the Greek world. Okay, all right. Studies show that specific areas of the brain are involved in experiencing and expressing gratitude. Okay, that's surely true. All right, brain scans of people assigned a task that stimulates expression of gratitude show lasting changes in the prefrontal cortex that heighten sensitivity to future experiences of gratitude. That's interesting. That gratitude is kind of like a steroid cycle, in that when you do one steroid cycle, apparently your body always has that ability to have that cycle of heavy testosterone happen again, and it even happens when you don't do steroids and you just work out on your own in heavy mass. Your body's like more prone to it. So, yes, okay, well, you kind of said some things, you kind of didn't say anything there with that. Is there anything else here that you got actually that's of any value? It's gratitude and emotion, one that makes a person feel happier. Gratefulness is also a mood as well as a personality trait. Some people are just more inclined to feel grateful as a daily habit. All right. Well, I think we've got at least a good understanding of what gratitude is. When you have a life that is very, very good, you sometimes don't recognize it at all. So you imagine that you shouldn't have this level of gratitude that, a lot of people would say is kind of a commonality. That, this is obviously how you should feel about the world. But, in time, you might have someone say, something different about, this or that, in your life, and you'll find yourself in a state where instead of having gratitude for all of the huge number of things that you have that work out very well, because you don't even recognize how good you have it, you'll get just this feeling of, nihilistic, disinterest. And you'll have what I would, label as resentment instead. And, that's naturally going to occur when you have things so good that you don't realize that they're good. So, what is resentment? It's, we can look at this because they've got a dictionary, way to describe it. Why don't we go for that real quick instead of the constant Wikipedia, go through. Indignation or ill will stemming from a feeling of having been wronged or offended. So that's interesting when we're talking about what we were just talking about, which is the idea of someone living in a really wonderful space and time and not recognizing it. So they have an indignation about where they live and how good it is and whatnot, and they have an ill will stemming from that indignation because they have a feeling that they've been wronged or offended. And usually that's that sense of heavy entitlement that, they don't recognize, something like where I am, where I have, snow all over the ground and I have to shovel and do things like that. And I don't even have, a properly paved road up to my area, but it is plowed for what it's worth. Again, I said that before. It's not the end of the world. But, the people, they have an indignation or ill will from, not even recognizing that it's a wonderful thing to never have to fight, snow. Some people have that experience at least. I'm imagining, and there probably are a great many people that are, living in somewhere like California or, Florida or somewhere in those areas that, I can understand them just not getting, a good sense that it's really good. But for what it's worth, there are a lot of homeless people in these areas because they actually know how good it is. There are a lot of people that get it because they have had it bad. And they're, when you're living out on the street or something, I'm sure it's impossible to have it be snowy on the street. That is to say, you definitely don't want to be in that space in comparison to some sunny, beach. So let's move on. So the state of feeling or perceiving, strong or clear sensation, feeling or perception, conviction, impression. So the state of feeling that is to say, indignation or ill will. The sense of what is done to one, whether good or evil. That's a resentment, really. And then over on Wikipedia, they say resentment is a complex, multi-layered emotion that has been described as a mixture of disappointment, disgust, anger, and fear. Other psychologists consider it a mood, or as a secondary emotion that can be elicited in the face of insult and or injury. So they don't even really say that it's a necessarily an initial process. They say more or less that resentment is something that happens through a sense of being injured. So, just looking at some of the images of resentment here. A lot of what seems to be people that seem to be unhappy. That would probably be the first ideal I see when I'm looking here. Seems to be a lot of unhappy people kind of, backs to each other, or looking askance and not wanting to interact. Now, I don't know if that's really resentment or if that's more anger, and short-lived anger even. Because I feel like resentment is more like this, except for there's both in very separate areas and there's a cloud bubble over their head that's like, oh man, I'm thinking about this person and I fucking hate them for this or that. I think that's resentment. And when we try to apply that ideal to something like housing, something like the needs that we're talking about before, you can see that if you had a resentment for something like the food that you ate because it wasn't good enough for your standards or whatever it is, it's always rice and beans or something horribly cheap, and you just can't stand it. At some point your mind would start to, imagine, because there is no other person in the bed with you like they're showing here. There's no other person in the bed, right? There's no other, person, over here across in the field. No. That's not what's happening here. There's no person across the table from you for you to resent. So you would probably naturally come up with, someone to resent, wouldn't you? You'd have this natural form of just hatred and anger. And imagine if, you're in a house and, you're renting it and you have no money and it's just all the money's just flying out the door, and so you're in this state and you can't have any state of real gratitude then, obviously, because you don't have any money. You haven't really been, all your money's been just flying out the door and been given to this other person so that they could pay off their mortgage, and while you're renting a thing from them. And eventually you say to yourself, you're like all of these people here. You're like these two people here, except for there's only one of you. You're resenting all of this money going out, and then you don't have anything, and you have nothing, and you have no money, and then you're going to get kicked out. Who is it on the other side that you're imagining is the evil? Is it government? Is it who? Where does that resentment go to? Where does it lie? Where does it end up? Where does it fester? Where does it move to after it's festering for so long? When somebody ends up going, poor, do they just end up getting poor and then resenting all of society, and then they never speak to anyone, and then they become, these homeless, waifs that no one cares about, and that just are out there doing nothing, and, in a state of constant resentment and, unhappiness? I do wonder, what happens to someone when they, do they still hold any kind of sense of gratitude for, life in any way? And is that valid? The strange little path that I've taken, talking about resentment, because, when I think of gratitude, I think of, my house and my ability to care for myself, and it really, it does make me happy. So when I think of resentment, I can imagine, the opposite person, someone who, is literally unhappy. They have their lives, in this state of constant, decay. And I also imagine them not having somebody else to, resent in the real way, like they're showing here, with, somebody across from them in the bed, or someone across the table from them. I imagine, okay, so like let's imagine like the drug addict situation that happens to a young kid. Okay, so we've got this kid, he's 15 to 17, right? He gets into speed or something, and then he starts stealing his, mother's, stuff, and then he starts stealing the TV, and he's pawning it, and he's getting drugs, and all of that gratitude he had before is just out the door. It just, none of it matters at all. And so you have this state of heavy resentment where he's like, oh, well, she didn't give me this or that, and he can make this up too, or she can make this up in their head and just be like, well, they didn't give me this or that, so I have this resentment, so it doesn't matter, and I can go and steal from them. I don't have to hold that gratitude anymore. Is it resentment that's happening in the mind's eye, or is it just a heavy drug, thing, or what ends up happening, I wonder? What is that person feeling? Are they feeling, is it a resentment that, makes them be like, I don't need to hold gratitude for these people anymore? Or is it gratitude that might hold off that, drug-addled, selling of the property of, a loved one? Is that how it works? Would a level of gratitude for another person actually stop you from, being a bad person? Or would resentment, or would resentment just make you be the person that's a bad person? How does it work, I wonder, is what I'm saying. When it comes to human interactions, because we were talking about gratitude in relation to having, some of your basic needs, fulfilled. But when we're talking about maybe human interaction, oh man, I've lost my sense. Is it that? Yeah, I've lost my sense of what I'm talking about. Very interesting, because what does happen in the mind of someone that is, on drugs? Is it resentment that leads them I guess, yeah, I'm back on that ideal. So is it resentment that leads someone to a path where they're okay with being a bad person to the people around them? And I guess the point I'm really trying to ask is, will being a good person to someone so that they should have a state of gratitude towards you change the way that they might act when they're in a incredible state of drug-induced mania? You know, like literally, like they need their speed, they need their heroin, they need their whatever. They're okay with selling and stealing everything of yours to get it. Is that, is it possible to have someone, is it possible to be good enough to someone where they break through that state, or are they just, it does it not matter, I guess? See, so that's not really about resentment, it's about more gratitude, right? Is there a state of gratitude which someone will have which makes them less likely to be to steal from their loved ones when they're on a crazy amount of drugs? Or, and is it more likely that the people who do end up stealing and doing those things just have a heavy level of resentment towards their loved ones for things that their loved ones may not know, and so that's why they end up stealing and doing that? I wonder that exact ideal when it comes to, you know, the human relationship. Do people, are they more likely to steal from someone that they care about if they're on drugs and just want to, you know, have, or just get more drugs? How strong is the human will when it comes to that idea? That's strange. I wonder. Because if we wrap it on back to need and want, obviously the drug is a want, right? It becomes a need on maybe a physical basis. But, you know, can you break that physical need basis because you have a state of care and love for someone? I guess this is probably an issue where individuals would be different no matter what. I think that's the state with everything, you know, the state of being able to decide what needs are and what wants are, what the necessaries are for life versus the necessaries that people believe while they're actually, you know, indulging huge amounts of wants. You know, for what it's worth, I could even not, you know, buy drinkable water, and I could take the water I have and boil it, and it would be fine. And I do have even a UV light set up, and it probably is fine water, but, you know, I just would prefer to buy water instead of drink, you know, the shallow, you know, well water. So, I mean, even me, I could probably reel back my own needs a little bit more. It's an interesting little, you know, it's always fun to talk about philosophy because you always get into interesting little points like, you know, is there a state of gratitude in which somebody would be less likely to want to steal from someone under a state of, you know, drug-induced, you know, psychotic nature? Could there be a reinforced state of gratitude so strong that they would be like, you know, I'm on drugs and I really need this, and look at, there's a diamond ring, but I'm not going to steal it from this person because I love them? Wouldn't that be an interesting thing? And instead they sit there and they shiver and they go through, you know, withdrawals until they can, you know, sober up and get enough money to go and work somewhere and get drugs again. I mean, wouldn't that be a completely different world than the idea that we've got people that are, you know, fine with just stealing from others? Huh. And, you know, for what it's worth, that none of this really happened to me in any real capacity. I had someone that I knew that was on speed. He never stole anything from me, though. So, you know, I guess, again, this might be an issue where you've got people who are individuals. And some individuals are more likely to do something that's, you know, negative or against, you know, what one would call normal values, and other people aren't. And some people are, more sound when it comes to, their needs and wants, and they're more self-actualized overall versus others who maybe just are living in a state of, resentment versus a state of gratitude. A lot to think about. Anyway, I think I'm going to call it here. Thanks, everybody, for watching. This has been another episode of the Pilfered Pyramid Podcast. And thanks again. It's probably have a good day is what I was trying to go for. But, the brain doesn't necessarily keep in tune with, the old thought processes there. So, anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good day.